Well, amen, and thank you, as always, for joining us this Sunday at New City Church. You know, our kids, we give them allowance every week, and part of it is really just to help them, how to learn how to manage their money. And you know this if you have kids, or you were a kid one day, maybe you got allowance, or however that worked out for you. But for me, it's like sometimes hard because we give our kids money and then they want to buy dumb stuff. And I'm not one of those that hey, never spend money on anything you don't like. I'm fine with that. I want them to enjoy it and all that sort of thing. But it's hard when they're about to buy something that literally in 48 hours they're not going to care about. And so, and I feel like I've gotten maybe a little bit better at least. Typically I'm trying to persuade them all the reasons why this is not a good idea. And now I'm just part of this is they have to learn, well, if I spend money on this thing, then I'm not going to have money for stuff I actually want. So a couple weeks ago, Roman was at the grocery store and I wasn't there, so maybe this is good for me, so I couldn't persuade him not to. But he bought a $5 pack of gum. And for 7-year-old money, that's a lot of money. I mean, that's 2 weeks of income for him. And so, but I wouldn't do it. But, it's good. It's he has to learn, maybe this is not the most responsible choice, but you have to learn, here's how much money I have, and here's what happens when I spend it. And I share that because today we're going to continue our time in our series, People After God, and we're going to look at a story that is somewhat well-known, however, also a little bit, I think, misunderstood. And what we're going to try to see today is what is the actual proper response to Jesus? What is it that we should actually do, or the posture that we should actually have, and how do we know maybe if we're getting it wrong, maybe even just a little bit or a lot of it? What is the actual proper response to Jesus? That's what we're going to be looking at. So if you have a Bible, will you turn with me to Luke chapter 10? Luke chapter 10 is where we're going to be. If you don't have a Bible, we have black ones in the back of the auditorium. And if you don't own one, I would just say we'd love for you to take one of those home. That is our gift to you. If you're in that Bible, we're on page 922. Again, this series is the People After God. We're looking at the lives of different people, or the stories of different people in the Bible, and trying to see, hey, what's going on here, and what can we take from these people so that we can be a people pursuing the Lord. Now, today, we're going to be reading the story of Mary and Martha. Okay, Mary and Martha. Now, this is kind of one of more Jesus' maybe well-known kind of stories, especially in the Gospel of Luke or in the Gospels. You might be somewhat familiar with it. You probably have read it before, at least most of you probably have at some point. But before I read this maybe well-known story of Mary and Martha, I want us to maybe set the context. Now, what you might not know, if you're not paying attention, is right before we get the story of Mary and Martha, we actually get one of Jesus's, if not his most famous parable. His most famous parable comes right before this story. Now, what can happen if you're maybe a little bit unfamiliar is, particularly in the Gospels, what can happen is we think, hey, these are a lot of really cool different stories about Jesus. And yes, of course, you can kind of read the stories and the parables on their own and take something from them. However, it's just also important to know that the Gospel writers have things arranged in a certain order because they're trying to communicate particular things. And so before we read the story of Mary and Martha, I just want to read if you look down to verse 25, to set us up of what we're supposed to actually see in the story of Mary and Martha, we get this. So in Luke 10, verse 25, it says this: Then an expert in the law, so this is probably a religious teacher who knew the Old Testament very well, stood up to test him. So a religious leader is trying to test Jesus. Now, if you're not quite sure, multiple times in the Gospels it talks about this idea of these religious leaders trying to test Jesus. Here's what they're trying to do. Jesus has gained quite the following. And so they're thinking, hey, if we can get Jesus to misspeak or to say something wrongly about the law or about our scriptures, then we can prove to everybody else he's a fraud and you shouldn't listen to him. So they're trying to test him. They're trying to trap him to kind of show that he's illegitimate. So an expert in the law stood up to test him, saying, Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He asked him. So Jesus responds by saying, well, what is written in the law? How do you read it? He answered. So the lawyer responds to Jesus, well, how do you read it? You tell me. And he answered, verse 27, this is Jesus, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. So again, Jesus is basically summing up all the commandments in the Old Testament as love God and love others. That's what he's saying. Love God and love others. After this exchange, the lawyer then asked Jesus, who is his neighbor? And then Jesus gives the famous story of the parable of the Good Samaritan. The parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, I'm not going to read the story, but just to kind of get us up to speed, the Samaritan in a Jewish context was a very bad person. You would assume it's one of those people you don't like, the people maybe you have history with, you've got beef with. And in this story, you have this person who's pretty much beat up and left for dead on the ditch of the side of the road. And you have multiple like really good people, like a pastor or a nonprofit leader, a really nice, good person respected in the community. And these people walk by this guy who was beat up and they just leave him there. They don't do anything. And then you have this Samaritan coming down the road, and the Jews and the Samaritans really hate each other. If you put modern language on it, they're kind of racist toward each other. The Jews kind of viewed Samaritans as half-breeds. I mean, that's some of the language that's used in the ancient world, how they wrote about them. So if you're a Jew, you're like Samaritan, bad person. Yet the Samaritan is the one who actually loves the guy. He bandages the guy. He takes them to this inn. He pays for his health. He says, when I come back, if there's any extra cost to caring for him, I will pay it. So you have like the Good Samaritan. It's like an oxymoron in the Jewish context. The point of what Jesus is trying to say is anybody that you and I might come across is our neighbor. It doesn't matter their gender or their ethnicity or their background. As followers of Jesus, we are to love and to care for everyone. And so again, Jesus just said the greatest commandment is to love God and love others. And then Luke follows this up with a parable of how to love others. And then Mary and Martha is a story of what it looks like to love God. Love God, love others. And then Luke's like, hey, let me show you what this looks like. Parable of the Good Samaritan. And this story, Mary and Martha, is trying to show us what does it actually look like to love God. And again, just for an astute Bible reader, this is kind of like a wink that Luke is giving us, that Luke is claiming that Jesus is God. Like if you're going to love God, Jesus is God, and here's what it looks like to love it. So with that in mind, we'll pick up the story, verse 38. It says this. While they, so this is Jesus and his disciples, were traveling, he, that is Jesus, entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who also sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he said. Now, again, just some context for us to understand a little bit better what's going on here. Sitting at the feet of a teacher, this is typically where a disciple of the teacher would sit. Now, for us, it's like, just kind of a detail, what's the big deal? In the ancient world, this is actually a pretty shocking part of the story. Not so much that Mary is in the room with the disciples, but that she's sitting at his feet. Like where she's located in the room for a woman at that time is kind of culturally like not normal. So that's kind of a shocking thing in the ancient world to be sitting where she was sitting. And so what Luke is trying to communicate to us is that Mary is also a disciple of Jesus. Now, again, it gets a little confusing because you have the 12 disciples, but then you also have many other people who are disciples and followers of Jesus in the Gospels. And so Mary is not one of like the 12 disciples, but she is a disciple, a follower of Jesus, or at least she wants to be. Now, also, again, helpful to know, in this culture, rabbis did not normally accept women as disciples in the same way that they would accept men. Women sometimes were allowed in these settings, but they wouldn't be seated where she was, with like someone's like right in the front row, learning and teaching learning from the teacher. So now I just want to say this: we are not told the reaction of everybody else in the room of like why she is where she is. But I would just say, at least to me, there is no doubt in my mind that there likely would have been some sort of like, at least in their minds, they might not say it out loud, of what is she doing? Like, why is she sitting here? Doesn't she know, like, that's kind of weird culturally? That's not where she's supposed to be. But yet Mary here, she's like right there, and she is learning from Jesus. And then verse 40, it says this, but Martha, this is her sister, this is their home, this is Mary and Martha's home, but Martha was distracted by her many tasks. And she came up and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? So tell her to give me a hand. Now again, in this setting and in this culture, hospitality was a very big deal when you welcome people into your home. It's kind of like today, but like maybe amplified times 10, times 20. It was a very big deal. Even more so when you have this teacher coming who seems to be different and more influential than everyone else. So you have like a big VIP person coming to your home. It's like we got to clean up everything. We got to be good hosts. We got to make a good meal. We got to do all the things. And on top of that, again, in this culture, this would primarily be in charge of the women of the house. They would be the ones making sure that all these things were being put together, making sure everybody that was comfortable, everybody was served, all of that. And so I just want to say this, and this is where a little bit people can get kind of the story wrong. What we find Martha doing is not wrong in and of itself. It is not wrong that she wants to serve and she wants to help. So that's not wrong. But she is upset that Mary is not helping her doing what she thinks Mary should be doing, and that's what gets her upset. On top of that, Luke here, again in verse 40, this is important. Luke here describes Martha as distracted. He describes her as distracted. Now, this is from the Greek word perispato, which means to be pulled or dragged around. You're going multiple directions. In other words, the problem here, at least according to Luke, doesn't seem to be necessarily the fact that she is serving. It's not necessarily the fact that she's maybe not sitting at Jesus' feet, but it seems the problem here is her heart, why she's doing what she's doing. It's the heart posture behind what she's doing. And Luke here seems to be implying that what is going on in Martha's heart here, it's more than just the cultural tasks and duties, that there's more than going on here than just what she's doing. Now, again, there's a lot of questions that we're not told. Like, well, you might be thinking, well, what should she do? You know, if there's people in her home and she needs to show some hospitality, what should she do? Well, we're not told. Maybe she could have prepared a more simple meal, or maybe she could have simply just served with more joy and not resentment toward Mary. We're not told how she could have done things different. We're just told that she seems to be distracted. And she seems to be serving in a way that is causing her to miss the most important thing. It's not what she's doing is wrong, but the way in which she's doing it is causing her to miss the most important thing. And so I just want to point this out. One of the things we learn from this story is that good things can distract you from the best thing. And I think sometimes we think, well, it's the bad stuff, it's the sinful stuff, it's the dishonoring stuff from God that I need to watch out of my life. But Luke is saying, no. You can even be doing good and God-honoring things in a way that is distracting you from what's actually most important. And of course, in this story, especially given the context of loving God and loving others, there is no better thing than Jesus. There is no better thing than Jesus. Now again, I want to say this. This is not, I don't think, an issue of serving versus sitting. It's rather, I would submit to you, a distraction versus devotion. Again, it's not that she shouldn't be doing anything, but it's the way in which she's going about doing it. That what can happen in our life, in your life, is that when your service or your love for others or you're doing good things, or maybe trying to help other people connect with Jesus, when you're doing things and they're helping you have a heart towards God or helping other people connect with Jesus, that's a good thing. But if our motivations are off when we're doing it, then it's causing us to miss what's the most important thing. Let me try to make some sense of this. I think one of the problems we run into is that we think, hey, I'll go to church because it's the right thing to do. Or I'll be a little bit generous in this situation because it's the right thing to do. Or maybe I'll help someone move this Saturday even though I don't really want to because it's the right thing to do. Or I'll take some time to do some good deed. And if we think doing the thing in itself is what matters, and of course it does matter to do these good things, but if we think doing the thing itself is what matters, and we do it from a place of maybe trying to prove ourselves, or somehow trying to pay God back, or trying to, hey, God, if I do this, then you owe me this, then we've missed it, right? But if we're doing it out of genuine devotion, a desire to love God well, that's what matters. So let me maybe illustrate you for a story from my life. Christina and I have fostered a number of kids over the last couple of years, and every time we get a newish placement, what I try to do is at least be a little bit more proactive around the house, because obviously it's a big change for both of us, but it's even a bigger change, and it's more of a weight overall on Christina, because I still have I do my normal job, more stuff, most of the days, and the evenings are a little bit different, but she really takes the weight of it, especially in the beginning when we have these kids. And so small way I can try to help is just try to be more intentional around the house. Now, I could be trying to be more intentional around the house because it's the right thing to do, or maybe just so Christina doesn't get mad at me, she doesn't get upset with me. Or I could do it simply because I want to help her and I want to honor God and her. So my motivation is I got to keep her happy, and I guess it's the right thing to do, and I don't want to make her mad. Or no, I want to do this because I want to be helpful, and this is a God-honoring thing. And I just want to say, I'm not sure, as we'll see in a second, that Jesus' encouragement to Martha here, or kind of his rebuttal to Martha here, I'm not sure that it's actually, you shouldn't be doing anything, Martha, you shouldn't be serving. I think that Jesus is more concerned with her heart posture in this moment and why she's doing what she's doing. Not exactly what she's doing, but why she's actually doing it. Because she is distracted. And before we keep reading, again, if we're trying to apply this to our life, I think a question that we should ask when we read a story like this for us is this, like, are you distracted? Like, is there something in your life that's maybe got your attention or stressing you out or causing you anxiety? And again, are not just like the bad things that maybe we know I should avoid this, but are there actually good things that you are engaged in your life that are causing you to miss Jesus, or maybe are just simply causing you bitterness or resentment? Is there something in your life, a good thing that you're doing, that's causing you to miss Jesus, or is causing you to be bitter or resentful or anxious? Maybe it's some of your household responsibilities if you're married or have roommates. Maybe you're going above and beyond and picking up slack that other people aren't doing. Maybe it's at work. You got some coworkers that aren't doing the thing, and so you're trying to be a good employee and you're trying to cover for them and do extra stuff. Maybe you have a friendship where you're going out of your way to love them well. Maybe they're a really difficult person, and so you're trying to be gracious and forgiving and kind to them just because they're a hard person to love. You're trying to be like Jesus to them. Now, in anything in your life, if you have a good thing that is distracting you, again, what I am not saying the answer is to just stop doing those things and just care about yourself. I'm not saying that. But it may be worth thinking and praying about your motivations or how it is affecting you, or if you are putting unnecessary pressure on yourself that Jesus has not asked you to do. Like maybe you very well should be picking up more around the office, or you got a friend who nobody really likes them. And so maybe you should, as a way to love them and to love God, is to go out of your way to love them well. But are you doing maybe going above and beyond what you should actually be doing? Again, let me try to make this make sense. In marriage, again, this is just generally speaking here, women are often more aware of the relationship because women are a lot more relational than men are. So in a marriage, a wife typically is a lot more like, hey, how are we doing? And men are kind of more like, we just like to get things done and maybe more focused on responsibilities. So a man, again, typically, generally speaking, might be more like, hey, how are our finances? Or how are things around the house? Or how are our 5-year plan, that sort of thing. And so I remember reading a book a couple years ago, and it really was a light bulb moment for me. That because I'm not super relational, and Christina's more relational. This book was I had this thought. I was like, Christina probably thinks about our relationship as often as I think about our finances. I think of our finances all the time. And she probably thinks of our relationship all the time. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is helpful for me, and I should, be more proactive in this area. And so I just want to say this I want to say this. Christina's great. She does the budget. We do all the things together. We're on the same page. But if you were to ask her, she would tell you that she rarely ever thinks about our family's financial position. She had no idea. Meanwhile, I could at any moment give you a general estimate of our bank account, how much we still owe on our house, how much longer until it is paid off, our retirement and our investment accounts. Okay, we've got braces for Finley coming up in a couple years, and then we've got cars, we've got this, we're Roman. I could tell you all these things at any moment. Now, that is not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing in and of itself. Unless I become so distracted by it that I do not enjoy the here and now with my family. That if I get so stuck on dreaming about the day in the future, years from now, when our house is paid off, and that's all I'm thinking about. That I don't enjoy the life that we have with our kids right now and the home that we have with our kids right now and all that comes with it. Because one day the house will be paid off, but also our kids won't be living there anymore. And so what can happen, again, the answer then is not to ignore our finances. That is not the answer. But the answer is to not become unnecessarily distracted by it. It's a good thing that can become distracting to me if I am not careful. So again, the question for us and for you, are you distracted? Is there something in your life right now that you know is a very good thing, but it's distracting you, it's causing you to miss Jesus in a way, or it's causing bitterness or resentment? How can you still do that thing, but do it with a right posture? That's what we're trying to get at. And so in verse 41, Jesus answers her. So she's like, hey, Jesus, tell Mary to get up and help me. This is Jesus' response, verse 41. The Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has made the right choice, and it will not be taken away from her. In other words, at least according to Jesus, in this moment, on balance between all the important hospitality duties and sitting at the feet of Jesus, Mary has made the right choice. She's made the right choice. Again, I'll give you another example that might be helpful. We have a family member in our family who all of us love, And this person like loves to cook, loves to host, all these things, and it's great. And this person also like genuinely enjoys doing it. And so most holidays, especially growing up, we're at their house, and this person will be doing all these things, and it's awesome. And they enjoy doing it, and we love that they do it. However, this person that loves to like cook and host and all these things often can get distracted by it. Often can do a little bit too much. And so this person can spend large amount of times in the kitchen and doing other tasks around the house when the rest of us would just prefer that they do less so that we can spend time together. And hear me, it's not that we don't want them like doing anything. It's not that we don't want them cooking the meal and cleaning up because it brings them joy. It's not that. But there are many times that it has come across as very distracted, and it makes our time together lesser because of it. It's not, hey, don't make any good food or don't do anything, but it's like, hey, do some of it, but then like spend time with us. Like they're very distracted. They're very distracted. And it's like here what Jesus is saying is that Mary is worried and upset about things that are ultimately not nearly as important. It's not that they don't matter at all, but they are not as important as of what is going on right here. And Mary, in this moment at least, has chosen the most important thing, and Jesus will not correct her for it. She has shown devotion to Jesus, and Luke is trying to tell us, devotion to God, and Jesus will not correct her for it. That in the list of options of all the things that Mary could be doing, she has chosen the most important thing, sitting at the feet of Jesus and displaying her devotion to him. And so again, the question then for us is, if you are distracted, if there's something in your life that is a distraction for you, the question then is, well, what is the right choice? Like, it's great that you can identify it, but if you have identified it, it's not just enough to like, hey, this is distracting. What actually should I do about it? So again, if I asked you, are you distracted? What is the distraction that comes to mind, and what do you think the right or better choice would be? And I want to say this too, maybe in this moment you have something and you're not exactly sure, hey, I'm not positive like what the right choice should be. And I would say, hey, that's fine, but I would encourage you to think and pray about it, to talk about it in your community, because it's not just enough to identify it if you're not going to do anything about it. We would love to, again, after the sermon, if you want prayer for anything going on in your life, we'd love to pray for clarity and wisdom for you. And I will say this too, if you do know, because I would submit most of us probably know at least one thing we could do. It's not so much like knowing what we should do, but do we have the courage to do it? Because I just want to remind us, I think it is safe to say that Mary sitting here at Jesus' feet was not only the right choice, it was the courageous choice in her cultural context. So she not only chose the right thing, but she had the courage to do it. She had the courage to do it. Will you have the courage to make the right choice? So again, we would love to pray for you if that is you. What is the right choice? And will you have, like Mary, the courage to do it? Because again, I want to read this again. This is what Jesus says to her. Verse 41, again, the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things. She's distracted. But one thing is necessary. Again, Mary has made the right choice, and it will not be taken away from her. So again, I just want to point this out. There are many things that Mary, in this situation, in this moment, could be doing. But again, she chose the most important thing. She chose devotion to Jesus, and she didn't let the distractions of life keep her from him. Now, I just want to point this thing out to us. Remember, the setup for the story was love God, love others. And then we get the story of the Good Samaritan, and then Jesus is showing us, or Luke is showing us in this story, is what does it look like to love God most over all things and show devotion to him. And so this is what verse 42 is really showing us, that she has made the right choice, devotion to Jesus. Now, real quick, I want to say this, if you have the Black Bibles, the CSB translation, which is what we use at New City Church, it says, again, Mary has made the right choice in verse 42. I want to point something out just because it's helpful. The more literal translation of this verse is that Mary chose the good portion. So if you're going to translate this more literally from the Greek, it would actually be not Mary made the right choice, but Mary has chose the good portion. Now, we're not going to get into like all the translation philosophies here. And in this case, right choice is not a bad translation. In fact, it is a more normal type of English that we would speak today. So that's kind of why they in this translation have chose it. We don't go around saying like good portion. You know, it's like, hey man, I like your outfit. You chose that was a good portion that you chose from like Old Navy, or like imagine it's like you're going on a first date, like you hang out with a bunch of friends, and you're hanging out with guys, you're like hanging with the other guys, and you like tell this girl you asked out, and the guy's like, bro, she's a good portion. Like that would be weird. You might get punched in the face. That just sounds really weird, right? So we don't like. the language, we don't really say good portion, and so that's why they say it this way, but literally the translation here is good portion. Here's why this matters. I just want to point this out. Luke here, and Jesus, he's the one that said it, Luke is the one that's writing it down to us, has actually chosen intentional language when Jesus says Mary has chosen the good portion. This is very intentional because there are 6 times in the Old Testament where the Lord is referred to being our portion. So it happens in Deuteronomy, in the book of Psalms, and in the book of Lamentations. 6 times in the Old Testament, the writers are talking about how the Lord is our portion. Each reference, they're saying, Lord is my portion. And what they're saying in these Old Testament references is that either that the Lord is my inheritance or our inheritance, he is our treasure, he is our security. And so Jesus is using this language to say, hey, Mary has chosen the right portion, and it will not be taken away from her. She has chosen what is right and what is good. And so again, a lot of questions today, but all that being said, man, but here's like the ultimate question we have to answer when you read a story like this. What is your portion? What is your portion? Listen, we all have many things and many desires in our life, and a lot of them are actually good. A lot of them are actually good. Many of these things are like God-given desires. So it's not like, hey, wipe out all your desires and that's not what's going on here. You have good desires, but we still have to answer, what is the most important thing to you? What is the most important thing? Is it financial security? Is it relationships? Is it your kids? Is it travel? Is it hobby? Is it power and respect or making a lot of money? Not that many of these things are inherently bad in and of themselves, but the question is, should it be your portion? Should it be your portion? Should it be the thing that you are building your life around? Should it be that thing? Is it worth living and giving your life for? Now, I want to say this. The younger you are, the more likely you are to falsely believe that the thing that you want can do for you what you think it can. And the older you get, because you maybe not get like all the things you want in your life, but the older you get, the more you've gotten maybe some of the things that you've wanted, or you've had friends who have gotten the things that they have wanted, and you've seen how like, man, it did not satisfy them. It did not do for them what they thought that it would do. And so if you're younger, it's just like, maybe it's a little bit harder to believe this. The older you are, the more you're like, man, like all this stuff, like it just doesn't do what I want it to do. And so remember, all these things that you can desire in your life, a lot of the times, if we're not careful, some of the things that we desire most in our life, they also can be taken away from you at any moment. Your kids, your marriage, your job, your health, at any moment. But, hear me, if your portion is the Lord, it never can. It never can. This is the good news of the gospel that Jesus came to do for us what we could not do for ourselves, that he has given his life. He is the perfect sacrifice on our behalf, that anyone who confesses at their mouth that Jesus is Lord and believes in the heart that he raised from the dead, you can be saved. You can be brought from death to life in Jesus' name and into the kingdom of God, that he will never be taken away from you. What is your portion? And have you chosen rightly? Have you chosen rightly? That's what we're supposed to ask here. Now, a little bit of a hard transition. I want to read one other passage, a little bit of a hard transition here. There is one other time in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where we get a story of Mary and Martha together. And the other time that we see them is in John chapter 11. And in John chapter 11, this is the story where Lazarus, who was Mary and Martha's brother, he was sick and he died. So Mary, Martha, and Lazarus are all friends of Jesus. Lazarus is sick, and instead of coming to Lazarus when Jesus knows that he's sick, he waits on purpose. He does not travel to Bethany, and Lazarus ends up dying. So he intentionally waits until Lazarus dies to make the journey. And after Lazarus dies, he decides to come into the town. And I just want to read you this. In John chapter 11, verse 17, it says this. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, less than 2 miles away. Many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. As soon as Martha heard, again, this was distracted Martha. As soon as Martha heard Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Then Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Yet even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Just to be very clear on what Martha is saying. Martha is saying, I know that if you had come sooner, you could have healed him. I know you could have healed him. And if you were here before he died. And even though Lazarus has died and Martha is full of grief, she is still confident in who Jesus is and his special relationship with God the Father. Now, it would be wrong to say here that Martha is thinking or asking Jesus to resurrect Lazarus. That is not what she's thinking or asking. In fact, we know that's not what she's asking because if you know the story later on in John 11, right before Jesus actually goes and resurrects Lazarus, she's asking Jesus why Jesus is having the stone from his tomb moved away. She's like, what are you doing, Jesus, when he actually goes down? So she's not asking for him to resurrect him. What she is doing in the midst of her intense grief, in the midst of her wishing Jesus was there earlier or had done something different, she is still saying, Jesus, I trust you. You didn't do what I wanted. You didn't do it the time that I wanted it. But Lord, I'm still going to trust you because you're just different. I'm going to trust you. So she's showing great faith right here. Verse 23 continues. Jesus says this to Martha. He says, your brother will rise again, Jesus told her. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. In other words, she has faith in God that there's going to be a final judgment. And in that final judgment, all who have trusted in the Lord, and in our case, have trusted in Jesus, will be brought into the kingdom of God when he renews the heavens and the earth. So she's talking about that. She's not talking about like right now. She's like, God, I trust you that I know that he's going to be in the kingdom. I get that. Jesus said to her, verse 25, Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who comes into the world. Now check this out. Martha here, in the midst of her really intense grief, is showing profound faith and trust in Jesus. She proclaims that he is the Messiah, that he is the anointed one, that he is the one that the scriptures promised, who has come into the world. And then in verse 27, Martha gives one of the clearest and strongest confessions of faith in all of the Gospels. Martha does right here, gives one of the clearest and strongest confessions of faith in any of the Gospels. In other words, what you have happening here is distracted Martha in the midst of her deep grief and sadness has chosen the better portion. She's chosen the better portion. Here's the question. Have you? Have you? What is your portion? What is your portion? And so I just want to say this. Listen, for the Lord to be your portion, there is an element of responsibility, spiritual practices, like renewing your mind, as Paul talks about in the book of Romans chapter 12, walking with his Spirit. It can't just be like, well, I wanted to be my portion, but it's like, no, I'm actually going to live my life in a way that orients me to trust in Jesus. I just want to say this. We only get two stories of Mary and Martha, so we don't know what happened after Luke 10, all that sort of thing, but what we can say without a doubt is that something changed in Martha. She clearly trusted Jesus, wanted to learn from Jesus, was following Jesus that allowed her to respond in this way at the death of her brother. And so what you see is both Mary and Martha demonstrate a devotion to Jesus and an understanding of who he is. So what is your portion? And it's going to be maybe different for different ones of us. Maybe for you, today he actually becomes your portion. That you've walked into here and you have not placed your faith in Jesus. That Jesus, as it says in the scriptures, is our propitiation. That he is the payment that satisfies. And maybe for you today is the day that you need to trust in his life, and his grace, and his mercy, and not your effort. That you need to confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord so that he can become your portion. Maybe for some of us, man, you just need to be reminded that you just need to rediscover who Jesus actually is. That you've been distracted about the cares of this world or things that are going on in your life. Maybe really good, genuine things are distracting you from Jesus being your ultimate portion. Maybe today the Lord is simply just inviting you to refocus. Maybe life is not off the rails and you have been walking with him, but you've got this one thing in your life that if you're not careful, man, is going to pull you down the path you don't want to go down. Maybe today the Lord is just inviting you to refocus on him because he is the best portion. And finally, whatever that is, however you would answer, however you're doing, will you and will I have the courage to make the right choice? We have the courage to make the right choice, to trust in our portion, that maybe things are not going the way that we wanted and he hasn't answered prayers the way that we wanted, that we know one day he will make all sad things untrue, and that everyone in the kingdom of God will be brought from death to life in Jesus' name. What is your portion? That's the question for us from the story. Let's pray. Hey, thanks so much for checking out this video. We upload new videos every week to help encourage you in your faith in Jesus. So be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you never miss a thing.